Hello, and welcome back to Chasing Masculinity. Today, I am joined by Traver Boehm, and we talk about his book and now movement and men's group, Man Uncivilized, and the history of how it started, where he came from, and where he is now, and the direction that that organization is going, and how it's helping equip men to become the best versions of themselves by facing this duality of becoming your inner animal masculine man and also being in tune with your divine and feelings. So it's a really good conversation, and I am excited for you guys to listen. Traver Boehm, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Now, you founded Man Uncivilized, which is a community of men supporting each other in their masculinity and their development. Now, this is something that I'm obviously quite passionate about as well. But before we get into that, can you walk through your background and maybe how you got into Man Uncivilized?
Definitely. How far do I take you back? I I studied philosophy in college because Bruce Lee studied philosophy in college. So it gives you a little bit of insight into I really wasn't sure what to do with myself. And I came out of college, and most of my friends, I went to school on the East Coast, immediately went into internships with JP Morgan and Chase and went into finance, right? I'm an East Coaster. And I got a job at a health food store because next door to the health food store was a martial arts school I could train at. I was like, ooh, I can train full time. So I was kind of always on the outside of the track. And very quickly, Colton, I read a book on the way flying from New York to Hawaii one time. The book was called The Gift of Fear. Have you ever read that?
I
That
have
book?
not, no.
Amazing, amazing book by a guy named Gavin Becker. Gavin essentially is a threat assessment expert, and he broke down hundreds, if not thousands, of violent encounters, attacks, rapes, murders, etc., and created a way to analyze whether someone was going to be a threat or not. And I read this book. It was a New York Times bestseller for about 2 years and was so moved by it for the first time in my life. I wrote an author a letter and I felt like such a dork. It was like, Dear Mr. DeBecker, my name is Traver. Thank you for writing your book. And I was curious at the time about executive protection, about bodyguarding. And I knew that half of Gavin's company was that. So half of it was analyzing threats, the other half was providing security. And someone in his company, probably HR, mailed me back a job application and said, rather than answering your questions, we'd love to have you come work for us. We will train you. And I went, oh, this is fascinating.
Wow.
And filled out the application, went through a whole hell of a screening process. And for the next 6 years, bounced around the globe, protecting billionaires, famous people, sitting at the back door of venues, not letting people in, like the glory and the absolute boredom. And towards the end of that career, I had a billionaire client who had left the country for like a year and a half to live on yachts and explore because that's what he can do. And he was I was his body man, so I was like with him at all times. And at one point, we get to know each other really well. He's like, "What are you going to do with yourself? It doesn't seem like this is your path." I'm working with a lot of ex-military guys, law enforcement. Like that was kind of the silo that career is in. And I said, I don't know, but I really want to affect people at the deepest level. He said, cool. How do you think you can do that? I think I can do it via their health. I was like, amazing. Do you want to go to med school? And I had come somewhat through the Western medical system, having some challenges as a kid. I was like, no, that feels an awful lot like pharmaceutical only medicine. I want to really like affect people's health. And from that conversation, I left that trip quit the job, and very quickly, within maybe 2 or 3 weeks, applied to grad school to study traditional Chinese medicine. The next 3 or 4 years of my, or next 4 or 5 years of my life were spent studying TCM, but also fighting MMA professionally. I had all of this angst and I was in my 20s of like, what am I going to do now that I'm done being a college athlete? I still have all this energy. MMA was just coming onto the scenes at the time. So I had a very split life, and you can kind of anybody see behind me, I have a gorilla and a Buddha as the branding for Uncivilized. And that kind of started the I want to engage in both sides of the coin idea before Uncivilized was even a thing. So my morning would be spent down in Orange County, California, getting the shit kicked out of me and learning how to fight by amazing, amazing people. And then at night, I'd be in grad school, mostly with women, many of whom had like crystals and other stuff on their desks, talking about herbs and needles and physiology and illness. And that kind of solidified something in me of I want to play with dualities.
Hmm.
In my last 3 weeks of school, Colton, I had been going to a CrossFit gym to cross train for MMA. And this is early CrossFit. This is maybe 2006, 2007, when there were only, 500 gyms. And the gym I was at was really, really, really well run. It wasn't fly by the seat of their pants. It was a great community. I saw people's bodies transform. I saw their lives transform. And about 3 weeks before I graduated, a woman came in to see me in the clinic. I was seeing patients under the under the tutelage of a mentor. And she came in and she said, I'm here for a weight loss treatment. This is acupuncture, like putting needles in people. She was severely overweight. And I remember saying to her, beautiful, if you don't mind, I would love to help design a fitness program, a nutrition program. Like, you're going to need more than me. Like, can we look at your diet? Are you willing to walk to the mailbox and back 3 times a day? And next time when you come in, like, show me your results. And I kind of laid out this whole speech for her. And at the end, she went, no, no, thank you. I just love to get the needles. And then she added this point, which kind of tipped me over the edge. She said, I should probably also tell you that last night I had 2 Big Macs. And I was like, why in the actual fuck did you have 2 Big Macs if you're here for a weight loss treatment? And her answer like cut me to the core. She said, because I got a coupon in the mail. And I went, okay, I've just studied for 4 years of my life. That's how long acupuncture school is. So intense. Studied Western physiology or Western medicine, Eastern medicine, herbs, acupuncture points, anatomy and physiology. Like, it is a super intense program. I have all of that knowledge. I'm a professional athlete. I'm getting paid to fight and I can train you. And I'm up against a coupon. That was like, no, no, thank you. I got a coupon. So that evening, I actually reached out to a buddy of mine who was on my water polo team in college. He was also doing CrossFit, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about us moving to Santa Barbara, California, and opening a gym?" And he went, "Holy shit! Let me get back to you." And 2 hours later, messaged me and was like, "If you're serious, I'm in." And we moved literally weeks later to Santa Barbara, knowing no one, opened a gym, and within 2 or 3 years, it was one of the largest and most successful gyms in Santa Barbara. Now, here's the turning point, because I know what you're getting at. In that time, I married my study partner from school, who was absolutely the woman of my dreams, built a gym that was making $500,000 a year, where I had to work 5, 6 hours a week, had a thriving acupuncture practice, was starting to get recognized as a writer. And all of that sounds like, wow, your life is really starting to take off. And then within very short order, my ex-wife got pregnant and lost the baby, told me that was reason why we should get divorced. And then within a week, my business partnership fell apart for completely separate reasons. So I'm all of a sudden not having a kid, not married, and very quickly going to sell my business, which sounds like a shit spot to be in and is a shit spot to be in. But the way I looked at it, for whatever reason, how my brain worked, how books I'd read growing up, influences I had at the time, I thought, holy shit, this is the turning point of my life. This is an opportunity. I'm on rock bottom. I hate my life. I'm borderline suicidal. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Like everything I built and worked for and hoped for that had come true is now gone. And I remember thinking, like, okay, this is a control alt delete, right? Time to start over. What do I not want to come with me into this next phase of my life? Alcohol. I'm going to quit drinking right then and there on the spot. Pot, marijuana. I smoked a ton of dope. I drank a lot of alcohol. I looked at a ton of porn. So for you guys listening who are like, wow, you had the dream. Like so many guys, I had the dream. But if you looked in the back room, there was a lot of shit that hadn't been talked about, worked through, dealt with. And so it was numbing and hiding and living two very different lives. The duality that I now put forward with the gorilla and the Buddha, the primal and the divine, was like my shadow life and my upfront life. So that led to a whole big journey, right? Getting sober, getting sober from everything, starting to go to therapy. And another book came into my life at that time, a book called To Be a Man by Robert Masters, if you've ever read that. Robert actually died in March of this year, just a few months ago. And I read that book cover to cover on another airplane and looked Robert up and found out that he was, of all places, doing a workshop in Santa Barbara, California, which you know is not a big place. For people listening, you're talking about 100,000 people in the town, in the city. So I went to that workshop. It was 5 guys in a yurt for 5 days doing like the deepest, darkest shadow work we could do. And Colton, I walked out of there and describe it as feeling like I'd lived the first 40 years of my life with one arm tied behind my back.
Wow.
And then suddenly, I've got both hands, both arms. And the arm that was tied behind my back was my relationship to men, my relationship to my own masculinity, acknowledging that I am a man. And therefore, there's certain ways that if I live, my life works well. If there's certain ways that I live, my life doesn't work well. So suddenly I was now on this path of reading Iron John, reading Way of the Superior Man, talking to men, joining men's joining men's workshops, joining men's groups. And it didn't take long before I wrote my first book, which was on how do you use the pain of heartbreak or divorce to up level or spiritually guide your life. And this is where things really got interesting. Somewhere in that book, my buddy told me, put your email. He's like a much better marketer than I am. And so I just stick my email in this book and they're like, hey, if this is resonating, or like, I think I might have asked a question like, email me if. And what started happening was men started reaching out. Random dudes would read my book and go, hey, it sounds like you're doing really well in your divorce, or after your divorce, you've gotten sober, you're starting to write, you're living with integrity, all these things. I'm struggling in my divorce. Can you help me? And I was like, I mean, I don't think so. But any single person who reached out to me at that period of my life, I would reply to and say, here's my phone number. Call me. Free call. Let's just get on the phone and start shooting the shit. Because I had felt so many people had stepped up to help me willingly. I was like, I'll just pay this forward. Now, if you fast forward a year, I've had hundreds of conversations with men at their lowest point. And for some reason, my brain could catalog, you have an issue with the primal masculine. You are not primal enough. You need to get up, get in shape, go do some shit, set some goals, challenge yourself, deadlift, do some pull-ups, do some jujitsu, get out in nature, swing an axe, go fuck shit up. Or you have an issue with the divine side of the masculine. You're not relational. You can't get in touch with your feelings. You don't understand sexuality. You don't know how to express yourself. You don't know how to sit still. You've never meditated. You don't have a higher calling. And I'm not a religious person, but being able to put the two groups or camps next to each other really helped guys. And I'd get responses, weeks, months later, like, "Oh my God, that was super helpful. You should really do this for a living." And I was like, "No, no, no, thank you. I'm going to write another book." And at some point, it became inevitable that I was going to put all this together. I was having the same conversation, when you have like the same conversation 10 times in a week. It's like, I should just write this down so I can like email the PDF. And very quickly, I wrote Man Uncivilized and put it out in the world, and boom, my life exploded. Guys reached out, people asked me to teach. I suddenly had to build a team. Like my life just took off in ways I never expected. So, long answer to a short question. That's kind of what got me here.
Wow. So I think one of the things that men really struggle with, you kind of mentioned, is the feeling side of masculinity. It's understanding what you're going through and then how to verbalize that. And I know it's certainly something I struggle with too.
Sure.
So as somebody who's kind of been going through the gauntlet of that discovery, how would you describe your feelings now in hindsight? What you felt that day, maybe that turning point that you experienced when everything fell apart and you realized something needed to change, and then also the feeling that you felt when all of a sudden your other hand came out from behind your back.
I mean, the day when everything fell apart was desperation, right? But here's what's unique. There was this tiny, tiny little seed of thank God, of okay, cool, amazing, good, hang on. There's something in here that I think my higher self, whatever you want to call it, my soul, my heart, the deepest part of me went, do we really want to be living like this anyway? Right? Do we really want to be getting high every day, drinking every night in a marriage that doesn't feel good? Looking at porn when your wife's not home, wanting to do these other things and talking about doing these other things, but not doing these other things, and consistently being frustrated as to why aren't those other things happening. That's so there was desperation of like, oh my God, am I going to get through this? Am I going to survive this? Right? This is something that I think men need to talk about. Maybe 2 weeks before my ex-wife left, I read a statistic that the most common age for men to commit suicide was like 39 to 48 or something. And I was just about to turn 40. And I was like, that's crazy. Why would guys in that age bracket be suicidal? I would think it would be like 16 to 21 when you have like teenage angst and you're not figuring yourself out in the world and you don't know how to make money and you're living blah, blah, blah. And then 2 weeks later, I remember being like, oh, fuck. Um, I'm in that bracket and I've just had major, major loss. I'm the dude that like is up next to do this. And so I had a very real thought of I need to actually advocate really heavily on my own behalf. Right. I need to get a therapist immediately. I need someone else to be guiding me through this. I need to have good male friends who are like, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of you if something happens. Like, you'll be okay. Call us anytime. Um, I needed to get in those men's groups, right? Like, hey, get around older guys who all of whom, Colton, were like, trust me, we're divorced. We've all sat in the same seat you're sitting in right now. And look at us. We're doing okay. It sucked. It's like a car accident, but here we are. We're not paralyzed. Like, you're going to be okay. Trust me. And so there was this desperation and hope kind of mixed together. Does that make sense? Like, have you ever, like, the
Yeah.
house of cards had fallen? And so there was this kind of relief that, like, man, I don't need to be living two separate lives anymore. Right. I want to unify and integrate my life. So that's stage one. The second question you asked, like, what was it like to feel like I had both arms? There was a fullness to my human experience, an okayness. I'm going to be okay. The world is okay. I have a way to navigate life that I never had before feeling. I don't know how else to describe it other than like this is a micro of it. Like you don't wear glasses. I just started wearing glasses a year ago. If I wipe them clean, I'm like, oh man, I can see again, you know? And then like 3 days later, like, man, everything's blurry in my life or something like that. Or if you've been injured and then that injury clears up, you're like, oh wow, I can walk again. I can move again. You don't sleep for a couple days in a row and then get a good night's sleep. It's like, oh, life makes sense again. Humanity makes sense. So it was that. But here's what was also really unique. I felt like there was something I got to explore for the rest of my life. This idea of being a man, the exploration of it wasn't a one and done. It wasn't like, oh, go to this 4 day workshop and now you're good. It was beautiful. I get to carry this exploration with me for life. And it will change. I will change, but it's always going to be there for me to lean into and feel into and explore.
Would you describe that as you were given a sense of duty or responsibility or of weight?
It didn't so much feel like weight, Colton. It felt like a path. I don't know any other words for it. Kind of like when I started jujitsu. It was like, oh, 8 years from now, I'm going to be very different at this. There's going to be bumps, there's going to be hurdles, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be victories, but it's going to change my entire life. It's going to change how I get out of bed in the morning. It's going to change how I look at humans. It's going to change how I have sex. It's going to change everything. And so it didn't feel as much of weight or responsibility as I don't know. I can't think of any other way to say it than like literally becoming ambidextrous when, I was or like having an extra limb attached, that everything was easier. Like, oh man, I've been struggling my whole life to get from A to B, not recognizing that there were guides and helpers and people that I could lean into and elders, like people that have been where I am. Like it was like, oh, welcome to the team, brother. Maybe that's the feeling of I was a lone wolf and now suddenly I'm on a team.
Wow. Yeah, like a new path was unlocked, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So why Man Uncivilized? What was the reasoning behind the title of that book?
I was living in Brooklyn at the time and I had this really unique roommate. His name is Adam Cobb. He trains and still does NBA players. And and we had met at a TED conference. We both spoke there. And like a year later, he's like, hey, my roommate just moved out. I know you're kind of bouncing around. Do you want to come take her room? And I was like, beautiful. I'll move to Brooklyn. And so I'm hanging out with him and have this weird idea. I'm going to throw a men's group. I'm going to throw like a men's meeting. It wasn't what I wanted to do for a living. I wasn't uncivilized wasn't even a thing yet. I just had this like idea. I'm going to do it. So I put it on Facebook. I put it on Eventbrite. We had this like big conference center in the building that we lived in. So it was like free. You can just use the thing. And I remember for a couple of weeks being super excited about it and, expecting to come open the doors to the meeting and there'd be like 100 dudes there waiting. And I do this event and there's one dude, one man in there. And I was like, okay, everybody starts somewhere and sit down with him. And for about 45 straight minutes, Colton, I just like blast him with the masculinity talk. Like the masculine is the mountain, the feminine is the storm. We need to have direction and purpose and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like going off and off and off. And I think I took my first breath at the 45-minute mark. And he was like, oh, let me stop you right there. I've followed you online since your CrossFit and fitness days. I'm really just curious how to lose 25 pounds. I was like, man, another weight loss person is now in my life. Right. So I was like, oh, okay. And I take the masculinity hat off and put the fitness hat on. I'm like, cool, tell me about your life. And this is a true story. He's a cop who was getting ready to do the like they do the cop versus fireman boxing charity match, and they do it in Madison Square Garden. So he's like, I want to lose 25 pounds for that fight. I was like, amazing. Talk to me about your diet. And he's like, here's my problem. You ready for it? I can't not eat McDonald's breakfast burritos. And I was like, motherfucker.
Haunted by McDonald's.
Ugh. Another like what? Okay, McDonald's is on my path. So I was like, how come you can't not eat them? Like, is it medically prescribed? Or like, what are you doing? And he goes, honestly, man, what it is they have the best coffee in the world at McDonald's. And it's on my beat. So I go there every morning, I get coffee, I get a burrito. And I was like, ugh, 4 years of grad school, professional fighting, like all of this knowledge. I was like, are you ready? I'm about to solve your problem. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to buy you a French press. I'm going to give it to you. You can make your own coffee at home. You don't go to McDonald's. And I like, rah, 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 right? And I still have a photo of him from that night, which is really cool because I left that meeting. I went upstairs to my roommate and I was like, motherfucker just wants to lose 25 pounds. And he can't go, can't McDonald's. And I was like huffing and puffing around the apartment. Uh, and then Adam and I spent the evening having a very, very in depth conversation about our fathers, about a relationship that had gone really awry for him, I think, in high school, like real deep stuff. Like we dropped in and got to some like, whoa, that was some real truth that we're sharing with each other. And then went to sleep. Woke up the next morning as we usually did to work out at like 5. And we're about to leave the apartment to go downstairs and work out. And he goes, hey, man, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you had McDonald's? And this is it, right? This is the $1 million sentence, Colton. I said, I don't eat that shit. That's civilian food. And he goes, what are you talking about, civilian food? And he actually pulled his phone out and started filming me. And I said, take a look at us. We are two single guys, very successful in an apartment with no television, no alcohol, no drugs. We're not fucking a bunch of random women. We spent the evening having a very in depth, truthful, intimate, for lack of a better word, conversation. And now it's 5 in the goddamn morning, and we're about to go get absolutely savage on a pile of weights. This is not how civilized men live. Civilized men get put into a machine that kicks them out 25 years, 35 years later, diabetic, overweight, broken, divorced a couple times with kids who won't talk to them, uninspired, and broke. I don't want to be a part of that machine. And he was like, cool, thanks. And we went downstairs. And throughout the entire workout, I couldn't get the word uncivilized out of my head. It just was like, and I'm a writer. So when a word gets in there, it does what it does. And I came upstairs and I had a business coach at the time who I think I had told Colton 2 weeks before. He was like, give me your priorities for what you want to do with your business life. And I was like, A, B, C, D, E. And if I have any time left over, which I probably won't, I think I may want to work with men. And I went right upstairs and emailed him and said, hey, brother, the priorities just shifted. I want to start a men's movement. I'm calling it Uncivilized. And he was like, ooh, the uncivilized man. And I went, nope, Man Uncivilized. And that's how it happened.
Wow. Wow. So you kind of mentioned the imagery of the gorilla and then the Buddha for the
Yeah.
two, I guess, the dichotomy of maybe the two aspects of masculinity that you're seeing a distinct lack of. What
Yeah.
would you kind of mention some of the things that you went through in how you described yourself as not a civilian? So what
Mm,
would Man Uncivilized look like in practice
definitely.
with those two images?
I mean, think of, first of all, an uncivilized man, let's call him, has access to the full spectrum. From very, very primal of this is a dude who's living in the woods, hunting his own food with no power or electricity, doesn't know what the internet is. Like that dude's uncivilized as fuck. All the way down to perhaps the guy who's devoted himself to family and is living, in civilization, but has his own path. He's got his own purpose. He has his own mission. He's by design putting together and building the life that he wants to build. Now he has also a physical practice of some kind. We as men need to be physical. I'm 50 years old and still lift weights, still do jujitsu. I'm going surfing for the next 2 months. Physicality never leaves the masculine animal. Like that is a huge part of who we are. The divine side as well. Most of my guys, if not all of my guys, get up and the first thing they do in the morning is meditate, or they have some kind of practice of stillness, some kind of practice. It could be prayer, I don't care. Some kind of connection to something bigger than they are, whether that's, quote, God or nature or their own souls. But they're engaged in the internal exploration as they are in the external expression. That makes sense? So these are very dynamic humans, but they're not just Fortune 500 CEOs who come home and then crack their third martini and watch Netflix. They're relational beings. They understand trauma. They understand contact. They understand therapeutic aspects. They've read nonviolent communication. They're also engaging in relational expressions. So where they are on the spectrum at any given time will fluctuate. But the movement was, I'm building a movement of a million men who express their masculinity through both the primal and the divine. And when I was putting this all together in 2017, 2018, what I personally found was it felt like there was a binary. Like, hey, you're a man, you got to choose. You either go the primal path or you go the divine path. But all the space in the middle, we don't want anybody in there. And that's the space that I took up. Was I don't want to pretend that I'm a Navy SEAL for a weekend and get yelled at by a bunch of dudes. And I also don't want to like sit around in a sewing circle and just like cry about my feelings all weekend either. I want to actually be able to do both at my own choice.
So if you're unlocking the full spectrum for men,
Mm-hmm.
have you seen from working with men, where do most people start? Where do they lie on that spectrum and then thus need to unlock the other side of?
It's completely individual. A lot of times, too, and we can generalize here, I'll just generalize, it's generational. So
Mm.
I'm 50. Guys 40, 38, and up are often too far on the primal side. We grew up with fathers and grandfathers who were like, suck it up, man up. Don't fucking cry. Boys don't cry. Don't be weak. Don't be a pussy. You just got to get through it. Nobody cares. Be the lone wolf. That like classic 1950s Marlboro archetype. Then a lot of younger guys, unfortunately, grew up in very feminized worlds where it was don't be powerful, don't be strong, don't take up space, don't be loud. You're a man. We need you to sit down and shut up and not be toxic. And so there's some like we can kind of generalize through the ages, but I mean I have young guys that are super primal and have gone through a lot of trauma and therefore creating relationship or feeling their bodies, feeling what's going on emotionally is very overwhelming, which makes sense, right? And then a lot of older guys, a couple older guys, let's say a lot, who are on the softer side, who are beautiful and sensitive and caring and empathetic and kind, but can't pay their rent and need that a little bit more structure, right? My teacher breaks this down as to structure and softness, saying that a man needs to be able to be both and have both. I called it primal and divine, but you can call it whatever you want. I think we all know men who are too far on one side. Like, oh man, this guy can't have a relationship with anybody, or himself. He's smoking a ton of cigarettes. He's drinking a lot. He's numbing himself. Or someone on the other side is like, man, the guy just smokes pot and plays video games and lives in his parents' basement and could be crushing shit or could be expressing himself more fully is probably a more honest way to say it and isn't.
Is
And
there
I
once
want, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to ask, is there one side that's harder to work with or harder to get out of?
No, I wouldn't say it isn't. There's one side or the other. Everything that a man is has somehow served him, right? So if I'm hard and I'm unrelational and I'm angry and I'm bitter and I'm closed off to the world, that's kept me alive. And that probably happened for some reason. Now, if I'm super soft and I have no boundaries and I let people walk all over me, and I'm terrified of putting a stake in the ground and actually saying what I want, on some level, that's served me and it's gotten me to where I am. So I personally like taking the divine guy, like a lot of my community that I work with personally is the nice guys, and say, like, hey, you get to claim some shit here. You get to ask for what you want. You get to have wants. You get to have needs. You get to have desires. You get to actually take up space. That's a beautiful thing about who you are. And I don't care, Colton, if I would say the same thing to women. It's not just men. Like, we're here to do things. We're here to be purposeful. We're here to serve and be served. That requires having some internal fortitude. But there's a piece I want to add to all of this. Both sides have to work through pain, right? It starts with pain. The 1950 Marlboro man is denying his pain. So is the sensitive new age nice guy. He's denying his pain too. And that's not something that we say to a lot of men, that, hey, brother, I get it. You're in pain. And you're allowed to express that pain. And I'm going to teach you some skillful ways to express that pain. And guess what? You're going to do it in a group because you're not supposed to do it alone. Now, that 3 sentence trio that I just gave you is the unlock for 99% of men who have been told your pain has no validity. Or they've just made the decision, like, I can't give this to anybody. They'll all leave me. If anybody knows how much pain I'm in, they'll reject me. They'll abandon me. They'll shame me. They'll put me down. There's this huge epidemic of unexpressed pain in men. And we see that playing out in addictions, in violence, in sexual violence, in porn use, in alcoholism, in gambling, in video game. I mean, all the things that we kind of lead the charts in is because of unexpressed pain.
Would you say that is the biggest issue facing the modern man right now?
That's a great question. My teacher works with horses. He's an equine therapist. And I remember the first time I met him, he took me up to meet his horses and he says, you know, the two things that horses need? And I was like, I don't know shit about horses. He said, they need to know that they're safe and they need to know where they fit in the pack. And I went, oh, sounds a lot like men. So I think there are a number of challenges facing the modern man. We're not really sure where we're needed anymore. A lot of us have been told for decades, we actually don't need you, by women and directly by women, but then indirectly by the culture. Men are bad. Men are toxic. Men are the problem. No, 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 no. There's a manosphere document. There's all this negative stuff about men. And so we're not really sure, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I allowed to be forward? Am I allowed to have goal? Am I allowed to have this? So we don't really know where we fit in. And therefore, we don't say this a lot, brother. Like, you and I don't walk around like, I don't really feel safe. I'm a 195-pound ex MMA fighter. I feel safe. But emotionally, like, in the world, do I know where I fit in? And therefore, do I have a place? That's where we feel and derive our sense of safety from. And truthfully, man, I'll add one more piece. Social media is toxic as hell. And any man who spends like 10 minutes on it will just get bombarded with all kinds of negativity, and men are bad, men are evil, and also men are supposed to be 6 feet and have 7-figure incomes and 12-inch cocks, or you're going to be alone forever. And men are also terrible and don't have any sexual desire. Don't be a man, but also where are all the men? And it's like, holy shit, this is confusing as hell. So I think that also hits a lot of younger guys who haven't really figured themselves out and gone, this is nonsense. This is noise. Now, I want to be a X. I want to do this with my time. I don't care how much money it makes me. I don't care if I get married from it. I don't care if women find it attractive. I don't care if men find it attractive. This is what I want to do with my life. And I have been fortunate enough to follow that path. It's some days, man, I have friends who've been in the same industry for 25 years and they've bought like 9 houses. And I'm like, man, if I had just gone to law school at 22 and been a lawyer this whole time, things would be super easy. I've had 5 different careers, but each one was like, man, that's fascinating. I really want to do that. From bodyguarding to MMA to acupuncture to owning a gym to being a writer to opening a men's organization. Like, I'm going to look back at the end of my life, and I'm not married anymore, and all the things and go, my life was awesome. It was real. That's what it was. It wasn't just awesome. There were terrible moments. There were heartbreaking times. There were years that I went, what am I doing? But I'm going to look back and go, it was mine. I did it the way I wanted to. And I think that if I could give that to any man listening to this, is there's a path inside of you, brother. Like, find it and follow it and see what that does. The all in on following that path. See what that does to open up opportunities, to open up adventure, to open up people coming into your life. Like, I can tell you that the day I went all in on Uncivilized, my life exploded in the best possible ways. Now, is it always easy? No, of course not. But has it been a ride? Absolutely, it's been a ride. A ride I would do over, 10 times before I die if I could.
Well, I'm curious your thoughts on this. So
Sure.
I've heard my whole life everyone struggles with it. Like, what's my plan? God, what direction? Like, what plan are you putting in before me? I feel lost. I feel directionless.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody say it's a couple years ago now. It wasn't. It was a prayer. It wasn't. I pray that you put a path before me so I know which direction I'm going. It
Mm-hmm.
was close this door if it's not the right path. It
Mm-hmm.
was this feels right and I am going 110%. This is the direction. If
Mm-hmm.
this is not where I'm supposed to be going, close the door.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, that's where I'm going. And that was a reframing that really stuck with me. It's not, I feel lost and directionless. It is, if this isn't the direction I'm supposed to go, show me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm busting through.
There's a great quote by Antonio Machado of the path is forged as you walk it. And I know for a fact, sometimes you just got to get out there and bushwhack, man. When I launched Uncivilized, there was no path for building a men's brand and building a men's movement. I didn't have people that had done this before to help me. It was fully me just out there in the front being like, fuck it. Let's shoot from the hip today. But here's what I'll tell guys who are struggling with that point. There were whispers in my ear for years to work with men, like whispers, right? Hey, you should. I literally remember a teacher a year before pulling me aside after I did some one-on-one work informally at a workshop with a guy. And she was like, you need to work with men. And I was like, nah, I'm not interested. And then like 6 months later, someone else was like, I got to tell you, I've never seen someone around men like you are. Will you work with men? And I was like, no, 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 no. I have this whole plan. And then I finally just had to surrender to the idea that like this kept coming in front of me over and over and over. And it became undeniable. And then, Colton, I had to look in the mirror and say, why am I afraid of this? What is it about working with men that terrifies the shit out of me or challenges me in ways I may not want to admit? And then go, if I actually make peace with those ideas, is this something that I'm supposed to be doing? And a lot of the things that we have to wrestle with are, is this going to make me famous? Is this going to make me a lot of money? Is this going to be an easy path? Will it challenge me personally? And for some reason, a lot of us were given this idea that when we find, quote, our path, it will be laden with riches and women and fame and glory. And also it'll be super easy. There'll be a lot of rest and downtime. And so I think a lot of guys know what they want to do, but they struggle with, yeah, but I got a buddy that made $1 million last year on YouTube. Like, yeah, but do you want to be a YouTuber or do you want to be a butcher? Like you want to dive into like that life, you know? And one of the things I found from getting older is how many people in my life have returned to what they wanted to do, which was something very basic, right? I remember this was a story from when I was growing up. I grew up in a pretty affluent town, and I remember talking to one of my friends' dads who'd left the C-suite New York City job and was now a builder, like in construction. And me and two of my friends like, why did you do that? Like you were $1 million a year bonuses, and now you're swinging a hammer. He's like, I'll tell you, boys, I drive around this town and I see my work. I go, that house, I built that house. I just got chills, right? Like I built that house. That house, I built that house. Like, you know what I did before? I moved X's and O's on a spreadsheet, and it was soulless. I couldn't feel myself. I didn't feel a sense of pride. Yeah, I was getting rich, but I mean, I hope everybody gets to experience having money at some point. I know it's so cliche, but if you're not doing what you deeply desire to do to make money, the money doesn't make up for it. Once you get past a certain point, once you can pay your bills and there's food on the table and you have savings, it's like, what do we really want to do? So I'll come back to that Antonio Machado quote. The path is often forged when you walk it. But I've helped 1,000 guys figure out like what are you going to build in the next 5 years? And the very first question is like, what are the whispers that have been there the whole time that you haven't wanted to hear?
I heard this. I guess it's some sort of human psychology where whatever during the really formative years as a teenager, I think for men it's like 12 to 15. So as you're getting into that teenager stage of life, whatever music you are interested in
Mm.
or you like, you come back to that later. It's always something that, even if it's not your current playlist, it's always something that you like. And even through playlists, it's like I used to really be into this, now I can't even stand it anymore. But whatever was in that period of life, because it was so formative, that's what you go back to. And I say this because I read about that, and then I realized I'd been doing that for the past like year, going back to that late '90s, early 2000s punk rock. And I was like, why do
Yeah.
I like this so much? And I realized that's
Yeah.
what I was listening to at that age. Do you think there's something similar with that desire to do the thing that you've had those whispers your whole life? This is the thing I really want to do when I was 15, and
Yeah.
now I'm an accountant,
Yeah.
and I never got to do X.
First of all, my CrossFit classes when I owned a gym for those 6 years were like, we're listening to 80s music. I don't give a shit what you all want to listen to, but it's gonna be Def Leppard because that is what inspired me. That was the time period. So I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. There was a innocence to you, not a naivete, but like an innocence of this is what I want to do with my life. This is what I think would be cool. One of the most heartbreaking sentences I've ever heard was from a friend of mine who is very, 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 very successful. And he works in corporate America. And he said, my 10-year-old self hates me. And I was like, oh man, I don't have 100th of his money, but my 10-year-old self is like clapping every day that this is what I get to do with myself. Now, I want to add in one point. You got kids, you got a sick parent, you've got responsibilities. There are years and decades of our lives when we may just have to do what we have to do to take care of ourselves and take care of people.
The duty.
Yeah, there's responsibility. We live in an ecosystem. It's a very privileged, and I know that's a loaded word thing to be like everybody follow their bliss, and you're like, well, I'm taking care of my parents and I have a job and that job lets me keep them in the old folks home, or I have health insurance and I have a sick child and that lets me keep, her on the insurance. You do that. You do that. You take care of that. You take care of the people around you. And then my advice is, and this comes out of Way of the Superior Man, for an hour a week you do whatever the fuck you want. You wanted to be a rock star, go play the guitar for an hour a week. right? You wanted to be a pro surfer, go surf for an hour a week. Do the thing. Like let your soul express itself through the activity. It may not be the scope and scale that you've always wanted to do it, but go do the thing. Like don't deny yourself the joy, the satisfaction, the expression because you can't go all in on it. I think that's a really important thing for a lot of men because we are quite often, if I can't do it 110%, I won't do it at all. Like, well, I bet you an hour a week of playing the guitar will satisfy you and nourish you in a way that watching TikToks of rock stars won't.
Do you think that is a prescription towards the prevention of maybe a midlife crisis hits, or you hear the stories of all of a sudden a guy in his 40s or 50s or whatever age, he has a family and a wife, he just leaves it all behind and he goes and he does something really stupid and because he feels like he's been denied, and he has to now go do this thing that has always been in the back of his mind, and he throws his
Yeah.
whole life away. Do you think pursuing that, not denying yourself as you said it, do you think that would be a prescription to avoiding that explosion?
Yeah, I want to speak to some bigger themes here. I have found, Colton, that around in between 35 and say 42, there's a major life shift for a lot of men. That's either a divorce, that's the death of a first parent, that's the sickness of a child, that's their own illness. There's some catalyzing agent or catalyzing situation that comes, initiating situation that comes around that time. My ex wife left when I was 39. And suddenly I was talking to all of these older guys that are like, trust me, this is the time. It happens. It happens to our friend. It happened to this. It happened to so like I know they're like I know 100 guys that late 30s, early 40s who've had some life blow up, right? And I think it is your psyche is waking up. You're going, oh, I know how to make money. I kind of unconsciously followed the track that was laid out before me, the path that was laid out before me. Now it's time for a major reorganization or a reorientation, let's call it. Now, there's another time, late 40s, early 50s, when a big energy wakes up in men. And in women too. In women, it's menopause, right? We have a biological name for it. But in men, it's often one or both parents are past at that point, aren't they? We're on the back half of life. You're not going to be like, well, I think I'll make it to 102 when you hit 50. We start to think like, wow, I may have 30, 20, this many years left. This may sound morbid, but it's just the truth. A lot of people have died in your life at that point. So it's not just parents, it may be parents, uncles, friends, teachers, right? I've lost 6 significant humans in my life in the last 2 years, and I just turned 50. That's a fair amount of people, right? My father, my cousin, my teacher, 2 teachers, a friend. Like that's death is now part of my being more than it was when I was 35. I was like, oh, I'll live forever. A couple things have also happened at that stage. You've been in a career. You've probably hit a number of milestones that either did give you the satisfaction that you wanted or didn't. Like, oh, I got the second house and now I just have 2 houses and I'm bored. Uh, a number of factors come in. So I agree with you that yes, a lot of what happens when a big energy comes in like that, if you can't handle it, if you don't have a support group of guys around you to be like, oh, I've been through that. Trust me, calm down. Or like, holy shit, maybe you should take a year off and explore this way. It finds the cracks in your life. So your marriage has been bad for 8 years and then this big energy comes in. What's it going to do? It's going to blow up your marriage. Oh, you haven't liked your boss and your job and you've always wanted to be a writer for the last 20 years and this big energy comes in. What's it going to do? It's going to shit can your job. So what we don't have, I don't know if you got it, I didn't get it, is again, older men at each station of life to say, hey, guess what? You just turned 14. Now it's time for us to initiate you into manhood. Oh, you just turned 25. This is when you're going to start to do the. Oh, you're 35. By the way, just keep an eye on things in the next couple of years. This is often when things blow up in a man's life. Oh, you're late 40s. Just get ready. Some shit may shift, right? I've had this conversation with a number of men who are very, 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 very brilliant and very, 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 very successful. And they look at me like I have access to some secret truth. Like, I didn't know that. How come no one told me this? Right? I run a Fortune 500 company and I'm worth $17 billion. But no one told me that in my late 40s, I may wake up one day and nothing will make sense anymore. That everything I wanted to do with my life up until this point now feels meaningless. And so I have two options. I can go get on the spiritual path, or I can go get on fucking Xanax, or get a 19-year-old wife, like you said, and buy a Porsche and start doing cocaine, which I don't recommend. When these energies come in, they're here to usher us into the next stage or evolution of our lives. Right? Like, why do we go crazy when we hit puberty? There's this huge rush of hormones, but there's also just this huge rush of energy. Like, we can't sleep at night. We're all, like, we don't guide that well. Imagine at 13, like, I had no guidance, but if someone sat me down and was like, here's the deal, man, you're going to want to hump everything that moves. You're going to put on 15 pounds of muscle. You're going to get hairy. You're going to smell like crap. You're going to want to hate your parents. Like, if all those things happen, you're doing it great. As opposed to like the no guidance of like, what the hell is going on with my life? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, surprisingly. So,
Right?
of all the guys that you've worked with that have been through those age stages, that late 30s, early 40s, and then like the late 40s, early 50s,
Yeah.
how many of them or what percentage have gone through this major surge, this major crisis, whatever you want to label it as, that has blown up or that they have gone through?
Ask that one more way. I'm a little unsure of how to answer it.
So all the guys that you've worked with that have gone through the timeline of hitting those crises, how many have
Oh,
actually
gotcha.
hit those crises?
Yeah. I would say most people, most men.
Mm,
But the reason here's the bias. If you're late 40s and everything's cool and nothing's going on, you often don't call me, right? You don't come into my world. I attract a lot of people who are, hey, something's not right. I don't understand what it is. I My buddy said you may want to look into men's work, or I have a friend who's in a men's organization called the Uncivilized Nation. It's super helpful. That's when we get people. I do know plenty of guys too, Colton, that are just kind of like riding through and it doesn't hit. But I don't know what their quiet lives are. Like, I don't know if my neighbor's struggling with this. He's 52. He may be, but he's my neighbor. So I just see him twice a day when he waters his lawn. But I would say it's pretty universal, right? Men go through transitionary periods. Alison Armstrong talks about we go from prince to late prince, from late prince to king, from king to elder. These are stages that you can probably see even in men in your own life. For the warrior is under the prince. Like in your 20s, you just want to fuck shit up and do as much as you can and conquer the world and adventure and travel and sleep on couches. And then there comes a point where like, oh, that's not as much fun anymore. Why not? Why isn't it? What happened? Oh, we hit a different phase, right? Why is it suddenly guys in their early 30s like, I think I want to have a family? What happened? Is it just that everyone around them had families? Or is there perhaps some archetypal timeline which with a lot of variance in it, but kind of makes sense, right? Like, why do we have a midlife crisis? If I said if we pulled you and I right now went out on the street and we polled 1,000 people, we're like midlife crisis about what age? Most people aren't going to be like, ooh, late 20s, right? Like we kind of know late 40s, early 50s, mid 50s, right? Well, why is that? Because it happens to a lot of people. It happens to enough people that we've given it a name.
So you mentioned brotherhood, mentorship, having guys in your life that you can be deep with as
Yeah,
a potential resource during these times, and also just as good practice
always.
throughout your
Yeah,
journey.
yeah.
What is the difference between just a surface level friendship and
Mhm.
actual brotherhood?
Mm, depth, right? If I'm when I was getting divorced, if you and I hung out in the same room and you were like, "Cool, let's talk about the New York Giants." Like, "Oh, their season's going great. They fumbled for blah, blah, blah." I'm not getting anywhere with you. There's no real connection. But if you ask, "How am I doing?" and you go, "I want to know how you're really doing." And I'm like, "Man, I'm thinking about fucking killing myself. I'm afraid I'm going to go back to drinking. I don't know what I'm going to do after. I don't know how I'm going to survive this thing." And you're there with me in that depth and saying, "You know what, man? No matter what you go through, I'm going to be here with you. And if I can't help you, I'll find someone else. But no matter what, I will walk by your side." That definition, the definition of intimacy given to me by a teacher, is going through a hard time and coming out the other side okay while staying in relationship.
Mm.
That's intimacy. And intimacy, most of us think like, oh, we're having sex. No, no, no. Depth, we can just call it depth of connection, right? The guys who were there for me through my divorce, who heard all the things I just told you, who heard me cry on the phone, or like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Like, we are bonded. We are brothers. When I call them, they call me now and go like, "Man, I'm in it." I'm like, "Beautiful. Tell me the truth. What's really going on with you?" That's the difference. I'm leaving here when you and I get off this interview. I'm driving an hour south to a men's group that I have been in for 6 years. There's four of us. We've been through birth of children, divorces, breakups, marriages, death of parents. Those three other guys know me better than most men on the planet because I've let them in. I don't show up to the meeting and be like, "Yeah, everything's great. Cool. How you guys doing? Oh, your guys good too?" Like the supermarket, right? The checkout conversation. It's like, is that brotherhood? No. You good? Good. You? Right? Like you know that conversation. And we say you can watch it happens probably 50,000 times a day. So are you opening and allowing these men to touch you at a level of depth? Are you allowing them to hold you at depth? And are you willing to hold them at depth? Are you willing to be raw, real, and relational? That is brotherhood. And that is a medicine that would solve 99% of the male issue right there.
What would you say to the guy who's struggling or doesn't have any of those relationships? What would be his first bit of advice to initiate that?
I don't want this to sound like a sales pitch, but come join us. Right? This is why I created the Uncivilized Nation. It's why we have teams all over the world. It's hard to find that with civilians. Just like if you were going to go, "Hey man, I think I really want to get good at jujitsu today." I wouldn't be like, "Cool, go grab five of your neighbors and put a mat down in your garage and see what happens." It's like, go find a bunch of jujitsu guys. Like, start training with someone who knows what the hell they're doing. And we can look at emotional depth, the ability to go to emotional depth and hold an emotional depth, Colton, is not just a willingness, but it's a skill. Right? There's skills to navigating when things come up for people. Now, you don't have to be a therapist. I'm not a therapist, but I've been there 1,000 times with men at their lowest points. Therefore, I know how to navigate and hold them in those lowest points. So there are other men who have skill. That's what I would say. Find us or find another men's organization if it's not me. I mean, I'm biased, but we're the best one. But every damn town, every city should have some men's group you can go to, right? Yeah, and I want to speak to this. The reason I started the nation, Colton, was because 8 years ago, when I started putting content out for men, my big push was meditation at first because I had a meditation course that was part of my background. I thought I'd already had it help so many people. And I had this guy reach out. He was a cop in Indiana. And he's like, hey, man, I don't know what to do. The other guys in my department just found out that I'm meditating and they're like making fun of me. They're putting me down. They're shaming me. Do you know other guys that are in this work that I can start to be in community with? And I was like, no, sorry, like best of luck to you. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm putting the content out, inspiring guys to get better. Why don't I also put a community together where guys who do want to be better and want support, not just support when shit goes bad, but also celebration when things go well, which is an equal part of mental and emotional health. That's why that group exists. I want to speak to the pain of I get it. I'm very fortunate to have the group I'm going to go to in an hour. And I wanted other men to experience it, which is why I built the Uncivilized Nation.
Why do you think so many men struggle with emotions? Like it seems like it's either you're suppressing them or you're completely controlled by them.
It's a great question because we don't have a lot of good modeling. We learn by watching, we learn by experiencing. So many of us grew up with anger being the socially acceptable male emotion. That's it. Like it's cool. Oh, dude punched a hole in the wall. What a fucking stud. Right. But if he cries, like, it may not be that cool. So we get all of this messaging that says, don't be emotional. Emotions are bad. Emotion will get you left. That's by your woman. That's huge in our culture. It's we talk about it and we don't talk about it. Never share your true emotion. Even in the men's world, brother. I know men's groups that say like never show your woman emotion. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. Don't do that. But I'm going to come back to the structure and softness. I'm going to come back to the primal and the divine. We don't have good modeling and we don't have good training. Right. So the first time I was in a men's group and I got to watch, oh, that dude just cried for 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it was. The other guys put their arms around him. Were like, thank you, brother. I appreciate you sharing that. Moved me. Let me deal with a little bit of my stuff with my own dad. Like I'm grateful for you. That was a fucking powerful thing you just did. My brain was scrambled. I was like, wait a minute. That dude just cried and you told him like, congratulations, thank you. I trust you more. I appreciate you. You just unlocked something in me. And by the way, at the end of the meeting, we also had to give our stretch goals. We had to talk about the thing that we're going to work towards and lean into. And if we come back 2 weeks from now and a dude's like, oh, I just cried for 2 weeks, I didn't get any of my shit done, they'd be like, go sit in the middle. What's going on with you? Why aren't you doing your shit? Like structure and softness. So I think, again, the same binary that had me yes and primal and divine is very alive in the culture. You're either too hard or you're too soft, which is exactly why I created Uncivilized in the way that I did.
What does emotional strength look like then?
It means you get to feel all of it and you get to use it. Think of anything that you use versus it uses you. I've written books, 3 books now, at times just like crying and throwing shit on my desk because I'm so fucking emotional when I write. But what am I doing with it? I'm pouring it into a book that built a movement, book that built a 7-figure business. That's me using that emotion. Now, I get depression's a real thing, grief's a real thing. If I had spent the last 8 years lying on my couch just being like, I'm so sad, I just don't know what to do with it. It's killing me. And I hadn't used it, my life would be very different. There's a time, man, we don't speak often to men have to do shit. It's not a pretty part of society, but we have to do shit. We're the doers. And I'll say this, a lot of men feel better once we've done shit. Like we really do. I don't want you guys just running around accomplishing and feeling nothing. But there's something in the male animal that like we climb mountains. We do stupid feats of strength, right? Like we're into stuff. Like we love accomplishment. It feels good. Every time I leave the gym, I feel better than when I walked in. Every time I leave the jujitsu mat, I feel better than when I showed up. Even if I got my ass handed to me. We're the doers. Now, what's fueling that doing? Can it be fueled by emotion? Can we take that and direct it and penetrate the world with it? With an idea, with a thought, with a business, with a community, with something? Can we like actually shift it? Can we use that emotion to build the life that we want to live? If you're going to build a life that's outside of the standard track, you better be willing to use emotion as fuel because it will be hard. You will be lonely. You will be challenged. You will be called crazy. You will be made fun of. And now you take all of that energy in, and what are you going to do with it? Let it eat you alive? You can. Or say, fuck it. I'm going to direct it into something awesome. Art, music, expression, sex. Doesn't matter what it is. I think that's where it comes in.
Wow. I would love to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Fire away.
All right. What is one habit that every man should build?
Meditation,
Mm.
period.
What is one mistake that a modern man makes?
Drinking. Don't do it. It's an easy one to get rid of. It'll unplug you from the matrix in ways you had no idea you were plugged into it. Don't eat fast food either. That stuff will kill you. Like, take care of yourself. But those two things are big. Most guys get rid of substances. Son of a bitch. Everything's real, right?
What would you say to the person then that says, "Oh, I need alcohol because that's the world we live in, and there's social environments where you have to drink to be invited to, etc."
I haven't had a drink in 11 years. I still get invited to everything, especially now. 11 years ago, people were like, "What, are you an alcoholic?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to be a party to this." That is a lie. That's what I would tell that man. Go a year. This is some of the best. This is why I quit drinking, Colton. Someone was like, "Go a year. If you can go a year, you know you don't have a problem and you can phase it back in if you want. And if you get to a year, you get to decide whether you want to keep it or not." And I went a year and was like, "No way do I want that back in my life. No way. It is just horrible shit." Um, yeah, I would tell that man, I don't believe you. And I'm a living example of the opposite being true. And most of my friends, Colton, who are super successful dudes, they don't drink either.
Wow. So next one. What is one thing men avoid that they shouldn't?
Pain and therapy.
Opposite ends of the spectrum there. What's one thing that you would do differently if you could go back in time?
I never would drink.
Mm.
I actually probably wouldn't go to college either. I would have just skipped that chapter and like gone and been in real life. I got to work on these yachts in my 20s when I was bodyguarding, and the guys that worked on those yachts, they had shit jobs. It's like scrub the water off the side of the yacht, but they made a ton of money and they adventured constantly. I would go do that.
Hmm. Oh, what is the last one here? What is the first thing you would tell somebody who feels convicted about listening to this?
Take the next step. Trust me. My life changed in 1,000 positive ways the first time I went to a men's group. Like everything about it changed. And I hope every man gets to experience the support, the love, the care, and um the level of play that's required when you enter into an intentional men's group. Like, all right, you're gonna play big, cool. We're gonna hold you to that. And if you fall flat on your face, we're gonna pick you up and dust you off. That like, oh, I'm not alone. Game changer.
Wow. Traver, thank you so much. This was amazing.
My
Where do you
pleasure, bro.
see Man Uncivilized going? What's the direction you see this organization heading?
We have about 50 live groups all over the world right now. And we just launched a nonprofit called Project Uncivilized, which, by the way, everybody listening to this, mark down November 19th. Do you know what November 19th is, Colton?
I don't.
It's International Men's Day.
I should know that.
Most guys don't, trust me. And no man have I asked has known. And I will fully admit that like 3 years ago, I didn't know it either. The nonprofit that I run, we have one goal on that day to have 1,000 men's circles take place in a 24-hour period all over the world. We don't guide them, we don't lead them. A circle can be three guys in their garage. But that idea of how do we have 1,000 men's circles take place in a single day is a big part of it. And then we want to have 250 active groups in the next 2 years. So what I want, Colton, is for any dude who's in a city who's like, man, I'm just not doing well tonight, or I just want to drop in and meet a bunch of really badass dudes, can find an uncivilized men's group.
Wow. That's incredible. Tell the people what else you got going on and where can they find you?
You can find me at manuncivilized.com. You can find me if you're a woman listening to this or you want to do a co-ed offering at traverboehm.com. I write not so much for men's stuff on Substack, Traver Boehm, and I have the Uncivilized podcast. I'm also pretty active on Instagram at Traver Boehm, which is TraverBoehm.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to include all of your socials and links in the description so people can find you very quickly.
Thank you. Appreciate
Traver, thank you again. This has been incredible. And thank you, everybody else, for your time and attention.
Thanks, brother.
Before you go, I want to mention something briefly. If this podcast has been resonating with you, if the conversations around discipline, purpose, identity, and what it means to be a man today have been hitting close to home, then my book, 24 Rules of Masculinity, is officially out. It is a direct, practical guide built around the same principles we talk about here: biblical foundations, hard-earned lessons, and clear direction for men who want to live with intention instead of drifting. This isn't theory. It's meant to be picked up, applied, and just carried with you. So whether you're just starting to take ownership of your life or you're trying to realign and get it back on track, that's why I wrote it. You can find 24 Rules of Masculinity on Amazon or through the link in the description. If you do pick it up, I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.